Abba Father, we are talking about the cross, and we are studying what goes on or what went down on that day of the cross when Jesus was killed for us. And in our previous teaching, we discussed that when we talk about the cross, we are not just talking about Jesus dying on a tree. We are talking about the entire process from Gethsemane, his arrest, his mock trial, to the scourging, to the crown of thorns, to the cross, dying on the cross, and the death and the burial and the resurrection and the glorification, the ascension and glorification. We're talking about all of that when we talk about the cross. We have a couple of places to read from, but I want to read from a number of areas. In Mark, I think I will do Luke chapter 23 and John chapter 19. In Luke chapter 23, in verse 13, it says, "And Pilate, when he had called together the chief priests and the rulers and the people, said unto them, You have brought this man unto me as one that perverts the people. And behold, I have examined him before you, have found no fault in this man. Having examined him before you, have found no fault in this man, touching those things whereof you accuse him. No, not yet Herod. For I sent you to him, and lo, nothing worthy of death is done unto him. I will therefore chastise him and release him. For of necessity must release one unto them at the feast. And they cried out all at once, saying, Away with this man, and release unto us Barabbas, who for a certain sedition made in the city and for murder was cast into prison. Pilate, therefore, willing to release Jesus, spake again to them, but they cried, saying, Crucify him, crucify him. And he said unto them the third time, Why? What evil has he done? I have found no cause of death in him. I will therefore chastise him and let him go. And they were instant with loud voices, requiring that he might be crucified. And the voices of them and of the chief priests prevailed. And Pilate gave sentence that it should be as they required. Let us also read John chapter 19, and let's see what it says. John chapter 18, beginning with verse 37. Pilate therefore said unto Jesus, Are you a king then? Jesus answered, You say that I am king. To this end was I born, and for this cause came I into the world, that I should bear witness unto the truth. Everyone that is of the truth hears my voice. Pilate said unto him, What is truth? And when he had said this, he went out again unto the Jews and says unto them, I find in him no fault at all. But you have a custom that I should release unto you one at the Passover. Will you therefore that I release unto you the King of the Jews? Then cried they all again, saying, Not this man, but Barabbas. Now Barabbas was a robber. Then Pilate therefore took Jesus and scourged him. And the soldiers plaited a crown of thorns and put it on his head, and they put on him a purple robe, and said, Hail, King of the Jews. And they smote him with their hands. Pilate therefore went forth again and said unto them, Behold, I bring him forth to you, that you may know that I find no fault in him. Then came forth Jesus, wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. And Pilate said unto them, Behold the man. When the chief priests therefore and the officers saw him, they cried out, saying, Crucify him, crucify him. Pilate said unto them, Take ye him and crucify him, for I find no fault in him, etc., etc. So, what is happening here? Let me just go through this story. You can read it in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Let me just summarize it in a quick way. So, what's happening here is Jesus is of course is arrested, and then he's presented into this kangaroo court of the priests, and then they conclude that they find him guilty of blasphemy, and the punishment for that is death. But they are not authorized to kill a person. They have to go to the Romans for that. So that's why they take him to Pilate rather than killing him themselves. So they take him to Pilate. They tell Pilate, this man, he's done all this stuff. He has opposed the law. He's turned the world upside down. He claims he's the Son of God. He has blasphemed according to our law. We must kill him. And Pilate says, no, that's nonsense. He hasn't done anything worthy of death. They said, no, you must kill him. So Pilate takes him aside and examines him in front of only the priests, and Pilate finds Jesus not warranting being killed. So he says, this man hasn't done anything worthy of death. He says, okay, take him to Herod. Let's see what Herod has to say about that. And when they take him to Herod, Herod just laughs it off and says, nah, waste of my time. And so then they have to come back to Pilate with Jesus and try to persuade Pilate and blackmail him and threaten him, and until he eventually gives in. But Pilate, trying to pacify them and also save Jesus, decides to scourge Jesus. Scourging was a horrible punishment. It says to scourge Jesus so that at least they might be they might be placated by the beating of Jesus, but Jesus will also not die. So Pilate then sends him for the scourging, for the soldiers to scourge him, and when they scourge him, after the scourging, they put a crown of thorns on his head and then dress him in a purple robe and bring him back to Pilate. And then Pilate presents him to the Jews. Behold, behold the man, your king. Should I release unto you the king of the Jews? And they said, no, give us Barabbas, crucify that fellow. And eventually Pilate just calls for water, washes his hands of this matter, and says, I'm innocent, do unto him as you wish, go crucify him. And so they take him and kill him. That's the short version. So, but I want to pick out some issues there. So first of all, I want to talk about the scourging, and then we'll talk about the actual crucifixion. So the scourging and the crucifixion combined was probably the most horrid punishment that the Romans came up with in all of their colonies. Jesus was not the first person to be scourged or to be crucified. This was a punishment that the Romans used for rebels and for treasonous people. It was for the worst, the scum of the earth. The very worst criminals were the ones that were subject to this punishment, because it was extremely painful, extremely gruesome and severe. But this is what Jesus has to go through for us. So in order for a scourging to take place properly, there was about 4 key issues, ingredients. One was what they called the whipping post. So the whipping post was where they scourged the person from. It was a post, either a piece of wood driven into a log driven into the ground, or something that they built that was strong enough and so what sturdy enough. So what they would do is they would make this victim hug, the criminal hug this piece of this block or this whatever it was. They would make you hug it, and then they would strap your arms in. They would fasten your arms in, the hands into, so that you could not move and let free yourself. Then they would tie the legs to and stretch you out nicely so that your entire back was nicely exposed and for a thorough scourging on your backside. And so that's what they would do. First of all, that was the whipping post. The second thing necessary for scourging was the flagello or the flagellum. It was this whip that the Romans came up with for scourging or for whipping their victims. They are the criminals. And so this was a wood, it had a wooden handle. It was a whip with a wooden handle. But most whips we are used to is just a wooden handle and a thong or a belt that you use to whip somebody. However, this was unique because it was a wooden handle, but it had multiple thongs or multiple belts. You imagine a wooden handle with multiple belts coming off it. Maybe 4, maybe 5 belts coming off this one wooden handle. So this is what the flagello was. And then these belts, they would tie into these belts. They would tie sharp bones. They would tie sharp stones, little rocks. They would tie sharp metals and hooks in these different thongs of this whip, so that when they struck somebody, these hooks and these bones and these metals went into the flesh of that person and hooked and dug into the meat, the flesh. The third thing that was necessary for scourging was 2 soldiers that were the ones to scourge you. So they would stand opposite each other and deliver their blows simultaneously. Strike, they pull, strike, pull. As this one pulled, the other one struck, and they just kept doing that. The fourth thing was they would have a soldier. There was a quasi-doctor, a soldier doctor, that was there to supervise the scourging and make sure they did not kill the the person that was scourging, they didn't want you dead there because they wanted to crucify you at the cross, and so that you'd be an example to everybody. But many people actually died at the scourging because of how horrible and gruesome it was. The soldier doctor monitored you until you were almost at the point of death. The person being scourged was beaten to the brink of death, and that's when he would stop the scourging, and then they would take you off and crucify you.